Hey, everybody, welcome back to Leaders Lead, episode 5 out of 5 with questions with Bill Wilder. Bill, thanks for being here. We're super excited to have you. Man,
Great,
it's
thanks.
been a fun ride doing this with you, dude. It's super rad. Um, you moving away. For those you don't know, Bill used to live near me, and we used to just sit and chat like this all the time on one of our decks, and um, the wisdom dropping from him and the long late night conversations were plentiful. So man,
Well,
this is a treat for me.
well, let's just be clear. I'm a conduit of others before me. That's all I am, brother.
Oh man,
That's I've been very, very fortunate to be around some of the best leaders in the world, and I've managed to somehow pick it up and distribute it elsewhere. But that's about it. That's my claim to fame.
hey man, I love it. Um, Bill, we're gonna dive into question number 5. So for those of you who missed who Bill is and what he's about, you're gonna have to go back and watch one of the 4 episodes. So this mystery dude, Bill Wilder, you're gonna have to go back and watch it because we're not doing it on this one. Um, um, hey, Bill, before we get going, brother, just want to quickly acknowledge you and thank you for your service to this great nation. Um, it's it one thing that the leaders or the people watching tonight should know is that we found out after many years of being friends that we both have served at the same base overseas at Prince Sultan Air Force Base in
And it was
Saudi
called Al.
Arabia.
It was Al Cars when I got there, but yeah, it. I still remember when they were just putting it in. So
Yeah, man. So random story for the ones on the phone. All right, Bill. All right. So leadership often requires doing the deed that no one wants to do, making tough decisions,
mm,
and that impact the success of a mission or an organization. And your experience in the military or just in leadership in general, making those tough decisions and then how to communicate them. I think that's the part that people struggle with is how do you communicate them effectively to lead
mm,
your teams through challenging times as they may arise. Can you talk to us a little
right,
bit about how you've had to do that and
sure.
maybe some examples of it?
Sure. So what you're referring to is the burden of command, right? I mean, it's not all easy decisions. In fact, way more hard decisions it seems like than easy ones. Um, what I would tell you. You don't have to go through the military to learn this, but I think at some point you have to learn to think about the bigger picture of any scenario, right? Whether it's a combat op and you're sending your people into harm's way, or whether it's I got to do a layoff because business is slow. At some point or another, to make these tough decisions, you're gonna have to think about the bigger picture, and that's not always easy to do because sometimes these tough decisions involve friends, um, or maybe it's just the challenges to maybe things you don't want to do. Examples come in during COVID. uh, my company, Background Screening World, revolves around employment in America.
Hmm.
And when COVID hit and employment fundamentally shut down, I've got a couple choices that I can make. Uh, I can lay off 70% of my staff. I can say, well, you know what, I'm going to give everybody, I'm going to make everybody take massive pay cuts, but I keep everybody. Or I can run this thing and hope it turns up, but chances are it's going to crash before it turns up. Uh, there's not a winning decision there. And so the way you go through that mentally is you have to think about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is to make sure you have a viable company so that people can have jobs in the future. You in our particular case, you've got to make sure that you provide a value add service that keeps bad people from getting in the wrong jobs. And so I would say lesson number one in dealing with difficult decisions is making decision, and the way you make the decision is you focus on whatever that bigger picture is, whether it's the mission in the military, whether it's saving a company, creating jobs. There's something that's there, right? So you have to focus on that. As it relates to the communications, that is, and I know in our last session we talked about details. I would tell folks, be very detailed in your planning of that communication. Um, and oftentimes, I'll have it down to, okay, I'm going to talk with this person at 9:30. Okay, I'm going to talk to this person at 9:45, and here are the exact talking points that I'm going to share. Um, I make sure everybody involved understands the talking points. So the communication side of this is heavy lifting stuff. I've watched people in my proximity in my career where they kind of treat the communication as an afterthought. Like for them, the decision is the big deal. I would say the decision is probably relatively weighted. Yeah, it's hard, but the heavy lifting is in figuring out how to communicate it, who, when, how, all those particulars. And so, what I would say is if you're communicating a difficult decision, again, maybe you're selling your company, or maybe you're doing a layoff, or closing down an operation, or you lost a big customer, or whatever that is, you really should be staring at a very detailed plan. And along with that, you need to be anticipating the questions, right? I think that's always important in this scenario. You have to anticipate because look, when people receive bad news, the only thing that matters to them is how to internalize it to the impact of their lives. I mean, we'd
Mhm.
love to think that, people are instantly going to be gravitated to the big picture. And there are some people who are, but the vast majority of people just want to know, how's it affecting me and my family? What do I do about it? And so understanding their point of view is important, not just for those impacted, but for those tangential to those impacted. Right? There's this concept of survivor's guilt in the case of layoffs. Um, so what I would say is think about your plans, think about the kinds of questions you're going to get, try to process their feelings and understand what they're going to do when you're delivering information about a tough decision. Let people go through their emotional process. Too often, I watch people try to immediately jump into logic. Oh, well, here's the logic. Here's why we're doing it. Oh, because of IMB. You got to let people kind of, there's a time and a place that you step on the gas. You have to give some logic. I'm always going to be about giving the why. You always got to give the why. But the level of which you swing that lever has a lot to do with where they're at in their emotional journey. Let's just take, let's say you're firing one person. Let me just take a very simple, micro, difficult decision. You're
Yeah.
firing somebody who's been with the company for 20 years, and for whatever reason, it's time to part with them. When you give them the information, give it to them quickly, give them a basics, but then after that, you got to watch them and you got to let them set the pace as to when you move through the dialogue. You got to let them process it. If they're not ultimately processing it fast enough in the moment, you're like, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't you go home for the day, come back tomorrow, or call me tomorrow, and we'll continue the dialogue. But trying to push somebody too fast through their feeling cycle doesn't accomplish anything. Um, and I don't know if this is kind of exactly what you were looking for, but I'm just trying to give you an idea how I think through it.
Man, there's no right or wrong on this, Bill. This is I think this is good for anyone listening on the type of feedback and advice you're giving on this. That's what this call is all about. That's what this is to give people leadership experience through others and advice. And
The thing I found, honestly, Zach, in my career and in the mirror, like looking at myself, when I'm really honest with myself and I say, okay, I have a difficult decision and it took me 2, 3, 4 months, a year to make the difficult decision, whatever that might be. When I really reflect on it, what I find is More times than not, it was really my own personal feelings that was holding up the decision. Uh, and in a lot of cases, um, I find after the fact that I wish I would have made the decision faster. Right? I can't even think of a time right now off the moment where I made a decision of this kind of nature of what we consider a difficult decision, and I went, you know what? Oh, I made that decision too fast. I can't think of one example, but I can think of dozens of examples where I should have made the decision sooner. Because a lot of times, what's surrounding these difficult decisions is a lot of pain and anguish for everybody, and
Hmm.
it's your own reluctance that causes these decisions to persist. Whether it's terminating someone, whether it's selling a company, whatever, however you want to define the difficult decision. Um, even in the case of um, even in the case of the military, right? When you're choosing people to send on a mission or to do something, um, I think a lot of times what holds you back is your own sort of, either, I don't know, fear is the right word, or your uncomfortableness with the decision. But again, I just keep gazing your eyes back to the big picture. If you keep refocusing on what's the big picture, what are we trying to accomplish, the
Yeah.
making of the decision gets a little easier. Um, and then it just comes down to communications and execution.
Yeah. I've that's really good and helpful for not only for those maybe watching, but for me, um, being able to process through the how to make the decision and to go through that. But Bill, I've often seen times where the communication isn't necessarily taken serious, and you know, um, I've seen it botched numerous times.
Yeah.
And for those that are listening, and if you can, I've seen it go horrible, and I've actually been on the bad side of this personally, where I
Mm-hmm.
actually found out before personally that I was impacted on something
Mm-hmm.
through the sneaker net, that the next day my job was eliminated. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had a meeting on my calendar put on that night, and then the next day my role was eliminated. And it's like, I'm like, boy, that's pretty professional. And like the rumor mill knew before my boss had even told me. And so
Well, it's just
it
it's and I don't know if this will come up, but I'll give you insight into one you probably didn't know about, but lived around you. Um, when we were at Best Buy together, and I was running the B2B division, you may not have known this, but when I took over that division, they had a net profit of negative 11% the prior year. And when I took the job to run it, they said, you have exactly 1 year to get it profitable, or we're going to shut the entire business unit down. And I think we had about 800 people or so on the team,
Yeah,
something of that nature.
it was big.
And one of the very tough decisions I had to make was, we had what was called strategic sellers who sold into high reoccurring accounts, and those strategic sellers were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But they were just clerking orders at that point. They really weren't. They weren't. It was hard to justify, and I had to make the difficult decision to change their compensation plan. And for many of those folks, uh, I was very hated. I was very, very hated. And part of my reluctance was I knew I was going to be hated, right? I mean, you're taking people from making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to making a more modest wage, relatively speaking. And even to this day, some of those people will reach out and throw visceral my way, like, you ruined my life and blah, blah, blah. But when going through it, the bigger picture for me was, if I didn't make that change, those same people would have lost their jobs. So we took a cut in pay, but the reality is they would have lost their job in their entirety. And not only those 10 or 15 individuals, but the other 800 plus people in that organization would have all lost their jobs. And so, I mean, there's kind of a real world scenario of what I mean by looking at the bigger picture, right? I mean, I left that job gosh, what, 15,
Yeah,
Jesus.
it was
Yeah,
April or
15 or
May of
so.
2010.
Yeah, something like that. So we guess, yeah, 13 years ago, right? And there will be people who will hate me probably till the day I die, and they will never actually know that not making that decision, they would have lost their jobs.
And a whole bunch more people. I actually remember that. And let me tell you why I remember that, because we got called down to the big arenas, like the big meeting rooms, into two
Mm-hmm.
different pods. And we got called down, and you had a big meeting, and you're like, hey, guess what? We're not letting anyone go. I
Mm-hmm.
remember it, and it was like the get two.
Yep.
That was
Get
the
to. And by the
mantra.
way, you got four, so thank you.
Yeah, I remember
The,
that.
the goal was to get to
And
2% profitability. That was our big sign, right? It wasn't the peace sign, it
yep,
was get to.
get two.
And
I
we
remember it.
actually got four, which
Yep.
was pretty phenomenal. But
Yeah,
that's
man.
the that's the kind of stuff you can expect as a leader. Because man, if it was all sunshine and roses, we would need leaders. Decisions make themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Bill, man, this has been awesome. Thanks for jumping on this and being an early adopter with me, and thanks for all you've done for me, my career, and um, my family. And I just want to say thanks, and thanks for helping drop wisdom for others on this. Um, what can we do as a community for those that are watching this, then, and learning about you, your leadership? What can we do? What can this community do to lift you up, support you in what you believe in?
So the last four episodes, I've talked about the military spouses. If you haven't gotten the message by now, I don't know what to do. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Everybody on here is a would-be leader. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be here. What I will tell you is being a leader comes with an incredible responsibility to pay it forward. So thank you for doing this. But for all your listeners out there, if you want to be a leader, pay it forward. Right? Gather learnings anywhere you can gather learnings, and just pay it forward to the next generation. Just always be growing people. So little deviation from the normal. Yes, still into the military spouse and making sure that we provide a professional roadmap for them. But for this last one, I'm just gonna just say, hey, look, folks, pay it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what keeps it rolling, right? Is to reinvest it into others, and that's what we're here for tonight. Is we're reinvesting our time and our talent back into others that care to click in and listen. So, Bill, man, it's been an absolute honor. Looking forward to seeing you in person, hopefully sometime soon. Um, anyway, everybody, thanks for watching. This is Leaders Lead with Zach Husted and special guest Bill Wilder. Bill, it's been an absolute honor,
Thank
and
you.
this has been fantastic. Everybody, thanks for clicking in, and see you next week with a new guest. Thanks, everybody. See you, Bill.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Zach. Thanks for doing
Yep.
this.
Bye.
All right. Bye.